I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, spilling my guts about something so personal on a subreddit. But honestly, I need to get this out of my system, and maybe someone's been through something similar or just has some good advice. My wife, Sarah, and I had been together for almost 5 years by the time I proposed. We'd been through everything: long nights, family drama, careers climbing, and dreams of a future. It was simple. I loved her, she loved me, and we were planning to get married. We were supposed to be the perfect couple, or so everyone thought. I thought we were solid. The wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but I knew something was off that day before the ceremony even started. I kept catching glimpses of Sarah and her maid of honor whispering, glancing at my best man, Dave, a little too often. I brushed it off as nerves or maybe just last-minute jitters. Honestly, I wanted to believe everything was perfect. As the ceremony started, my stomach felt tight, like a fist was squeezing my insides. I remember looking at her walking down the aisle, feeling that rush of love mixed with a strange premonition I couldn't quite place. Then, during the vows, I saw Dave slip his phone out of his pocket and glance at it quickly. It was subtle, just a flick of his thumb. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I stored it away as odd. After the vows, everyone moved to the reception, and I finally got a moment alone with Sarah. We had that quiet lull right before the chaos, just us, standing outside under the string lights, the warm glow making her eyes sparkle. I reached out and gently took her hand. "I love you," I said, voice a little hoarse. She squeezed my fingers and I felt my heart swell. But even then a cold sweat prickled at the back of my neck. Fast forward to the dance and I'm paying more attention to her than I probably should. That's when I saw Dave approach, stumbling slightly, his face flushed. He looked off. His eyes were glassy, and his shirt was wrinkled like he'd been in a fight with a laundry machine. He staggered toward us, and I saw him open his mouth to speak. That's when it happened. He blurted out loud enough for everyone to hear, "It's all true. I did it. I slept with her." His voice cracked and he looked like he was about to fall over. I froze, face blank, blood pounding in my ears. My stomach lurched and my palms felt wet and clammy. Sarah's face turned pale. The crowd around us fell silent, waiting for some kind of response. All I could do was stare at her, trying to process what I just heard. All the signs suddenly clicked into place. The way she'd been avoiding me all night. The way she kept checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The nervous glances she threw at Dave. It was like a puzzle coming apart piece by piece. I stepped closer to Dave, voices in my head roaring for me to do something. I pointed a finger at him and hissed, "You really thought you could just show up here and confess? After everything?" My voice cracked, but I managed to keep the hostility out. "How long has this been going on?" He looked like a kid caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "It wasn't supposed to happen. I was drunk. She was too. We're both sorry," he stammered. Sorry doesn't cut it. Sorry doesn't erase the years I spent trusting her, building a life with her. Sorry doesn't fix the fact that I married a liar." I felt my jaw tight, my fists clenched, but I kept my voice steady. "You're both disgusting. You think I didn't see what was going on? The late-night calls, the secret meetings. I knew something was wrong, but I never thought she'd do this." I looked at Sarah, her eyes brimming with tears, her lips trembling. I wanted to lash out, but instead I turned away. The shock was too heavy. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what I'd do next. The crowd was whispering, but I didn't care. I couldn't breathe properly, like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. I remember walking away from that scene, feeling numb, the world around me muffled. All I wanted was to find her, to demand answers. But I knew that was just the beginning. The worst part, I had no idea that this was only the first chapter of what was coming. And I wondered, how do you even start to fix yourself after something like this? The aftermath was a blur. I remember standing there, frozen in place, my mind racing a mile a minute. The crowd around us had dispersed, whispers fading into the background. All I could feel was this heavy, sinking weight in my chest, like I'd been punched from the inside out. My hands were trembling, and the sudden rush of nausea made me realize I was about to lose it. I took a deep breath, but it didn't help. The taste of metal lingered on my tongue, and I could feel the sweat cooling on my forehead. I managed to stumble away from the chaos, not knowing where I was going but needing to get out of there. The reception was still going on, music playing softly, glasses clinking, but none of it registered. I just walked through the crowd like a ghost, ignoring the concerned looks and whispers. My mind kept replaying that confession, it's all true. I did it. Over and over. It was like a sick, looping nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I finally found myself outside, stepping into the warm night air, where the cool breeze hit my face. I leaned against the wall, trying to catch my breath, but all I could feel was this searing betrayal. The sharp sting of her lies, the taste of Dave's drunken honesty. How long had they been screwing around? How long did I unknowingly sleep next to a woman who hated me enough to cheat during our engagement? My stomach curled tight. My palms were slick and shaking as I clenched my fists. I wanted to scream, to punch something, but all I did was stand there, staring into the darkness, feeling the cold seep into my bones. The worst part? I knew I couldn't go back inside. Not right then. Not after finding out she'd lied to me for so long. I had to get out of there. My legs felt heavy, like I was wading through mud, but I forced myself to move. I needed to think, to plan. I thought about confronting her again, demanding explanations, but honestly, what could she say that would change anything? How do you make lies vanish? You can't. That's when I started to realize I needed to do something drastic. The pain was unbearable, but it also sparked a tiny flicker of clarity. If I stayed passive, she'd just get away with it. If I let her lie her way out of this, I'd never trust her again. I had to take control. I needed to make her feel the same betrayal she'd inflicted on me, but in a way she'd understand. I remembered that terrible moment when Dave showed up drunk, confessing everything. How he looked, stumbling and slurring, the alcohol on his breath. That image would stay with me forever. That was my opening. I realized I had to match that level of honesty, but with a plan that would sting less but be just as effective. I spent the next few hours trying to piece together what I'd do. I knew I couldn't just walk away and pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. No, I needed to hit back hard but smart. I started collecting evidence, digging into everything I could find. Pictures from the wedding, messages on her phone, anything that could serve as proof. I didn't want to be just another guy getting played. I wanted to make sure she understood she'd crossed a line that couldn't be erased. I contacted a private investigator the very next day, paid them to dig into her phone, her social media, her connections. I wasn't just looking for proof of the affair. I wanted to make her realize I knew everything. The more I learned, the clearer my plan became. I'd confront her with all of it, not in anger but cold, calculated certainty. I'd show her I was no fool and I was done being a pawn. That night I stayed awake, drafting my plan. I'd surprise her when she least expected it. I'd have everything laid out, messages, photos, the whole sordid story. I wanted her to see my face when I told her I knew she'd lied from the start. I'd make her regret ever thinking she could get away with it. I never thought I'd find myself in this position, planning revenge instead of a life together. But the thing is, you don't stay silent when someone you trusted so blindly stabs you in the back. You fight. You take control. Because at the end of the day, I refuse to be just another guy who got played. I want her to remember this moment for the rest of her life. That's the only way I'll heal from this. Tomorrow, I'll finally confront her. And I'll be ready. I've never been more certain that I deserve better than to be lied to, cheated on, and humiliated. If she thinks she can just crawl back into my life after this, she's got another thing coming. I'll make damn sure she knows exactly how much she's lost. The plan finally took shape in my mind that night, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to cross a line I'd never imagined stepping over. But honestly, I didn't care. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and making her see that I wasn't some naive fool who'd stay quiet. I spent the next few days gathering everything I could. I had my phone, the messages, the photos, the social media activity, anything that would paint a clear picture of her double life. The more I dug, the more enraged I became. I also contacted that private investigator, giving them specific instructions to find anything that could be used as blackmail or leverage. If needed, I wasn't going to leave her a way out, not anymore. Meanwhile, I kept my composure. I didn't want her to know what I was up to. I had to catch her off guard, just like Dave had caught me off guard with his drunken confession. If I walked in with a chip on my shoulder, she'd just deny everything and turn it around. No, I needed to be cold, calculated, calm. The day of the confrontation arrived and I could feel my stomach tighten again. My palms were sweaty, my heart pounding like a war drum. I timed everything perfectly. I knew she'd be home from work around 6 p.m., so I waited until she texted me she was leaving. I made sure I was ready, with all my evidence on a flash drive, and I had the keys to her phone to access her messages directly. When she walked in, she looked surprised to see my face. Her eyes flicked nervously, and I saw that glint of panic in her eyes. Good. That's exactly what I needed. I kept my voice steady and firm. "We need to talk," I said. "And I mean, really talk." She blinked, trying to play innocent. "What do you mean? Is something wrong?" I shook my head, almost amused at her attempt to act oblivious. "No, Sarah, nothing's wrong. Everything is exactly as I expected. I know about everything, about Dave, about the affair, about the lying. Don't bother denying it, I've got the evidence." I slid the flash drive across the table. "And I suggest you watch it because I'm not interested in any more lies." Her face drained of color. She reached for the drive, trembling fingers. "You're overreacting. This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I think it is," I cut her off. "You've been lying to me for months. You thought you could get away with it, didn't you? I deserve honesty and I never got it, but I got enough now." I saw her eyes flicker to her phone and quickly realize I had the access I needed. "And I have every message, every secret rendezvous. You really thought you could hide it." She looked like she was about to cry, but I wasn't about to back down. I kept my voice low but steady. "You broke my trust, Sarah. You destroyed what we had. Now I want you to understand exactly what you've done to me." She finally broke down, tears spilling over her cheeks. "It was never supposed to happen. I don't know why I did it. I was stupid, I guess. I loved you, I swear." "No," I interrupted. "Don't even try. You lied, you cheated, you married me on false pretenses." My fists clenched on the table. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things. You're going to leave tonight, and I don't want to see you again. Not until you figure out what honesty really means." Her sobs grew louder, but I stayed firm. As much as it hurt to see her like that, I knew this was necessary. I couldn't keep pretending. I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. I handed her the keys to her apartment and told her to take whatever she wanted. "This is over," I said, "and I want you gone before sunrise." The words felt bitter, but they needed to be said. As she packed her bags, I felt the weight lift slightly, but there was still that gnawing emptiness inside. I'd never imagined my life would come to this point. I'd loved her, trusted her, and now I was throwing her out cold and clear. When she finally left that night, I stayed up for a while, staring at the empty apartment. The silence was deafening. I felt sick, but also strangely relieved. I had taken back control. I'd confronted her and shown her that I wasn't going to be played anymore. Now, I just had to figure out what to do next. But one thing was certain. I'd never let myself be that vulnerable again. I learned the hard way that trust, once broken, is almost impossible to repair, and that sometimes the only way to heal is to cut out what's poisoning you. The next morning, I woke up feeling a mixture of exhaustion and a strange sense of clarity. The house was eerily quiet without her presence. It was like the silence was mocking me, reminding me of everything I'd lost, but also that I'd finally taken control. The adrenaline from the night before was wearing off, replaced by a deep fatigue I couldn't shake. Still, I knew I'd made the right decision. I spent the day cleaning up the apartment she left behind. I threw out her clothes, her makeup, all her stuff I once admired. It was painful, but I needed that sense of finality. Every item I tossed away felt like a small victory, like reclaiming part of myself. My hands trembled as I packed her belongings into boxes, not because I still cared, but because I was doing everything I could to close that chapter. Later, I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where she'd once sat. My mind drifted to that moment when Dave drunkenly confessed, how raw everything felt back then. But I also remembered the sinking feeling in my gut when I saw her face, so full of lies. I had been naive, I had trusted her, but now I understood the truth. I'd been blind. I knew I couldn't just move on without some form of closure. The most important thing was to confront her one last time, not as an angry man, but as someone who'd finally had enough. I didn't want to hear her excuses or tears. I wanted her to understand that she'd crossed a line from which there was no return. About 2 hours later, I texted her. I kept it simple. We need to talk. Meet me at the park in an hour. No emotion, no begging, just a clear signal that I was done playing her game. I grabbed my coat, took a deep breath, and headed out into the cold. When she arrived, she looked exhausted, her face puffy from crying, her eyes red. She hesitated as I approached. I saw the flicker of hope in her eyes, like she thought I'd somehow come back. I didn't. Instead, I just looked at her coldly. "Listen," I started, voice steady but firm. "I know everything now. All the lies, the cheating, the betrayal. I've seen the messages, the photos. You can't deny it anymore." I paused, watching her swallow hard. "I want to make this perfectly clear. You're not getting back in my life, and I don't want to hear any more excuses. You lied, you cheated, you broke my trust, and I don't see how we come back from that." She started crying again, clutching her face. "Please," she whispered, "I was stupid. It was a mistake. I love you. I swear I do." I shook my head slowly. "Love doesn't mean lying and cheating behind someone's back. It means honesty. It means respect. And you lost both of those a long time ago." I looked away, feeling the weight of everything crashing down yet again. "You're going to leave today, and I want you gone for good. You're not welcome to come back, not as my wife, not as anything." Her eyes filled with tears, but I pointed to the path behind her. "That's the way out. Take your stuff and leave. Don't come back. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me." She reached out, tears streaming down her face. "I'll change. Please give me another chance." I looked at her cold. "You had your chance. You threw it away. Goodbye, Sarah." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, chest heaving, helpless. As I drove home, I felt nothing but a strange calm. It was like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for too long. That morning marked the end of one chapter and the start of something else. I knew I'd face difficult days ahead, but at least I was finally taking back control. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, contemplating my next move. I knew I needed to rebuild, to focus on myself. But the question still lingered. How do you truly move past something so devastating? And more importantly, how do you trust again after it's been shattered? The days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever endured. I kept replaying that confrontation over and over in my mind, trying to find some sort of closure or understanding. Honestly, I felt like I'd been hollowed out, like someone had taken a scoop of my soul and left an empty shell. The house was quiet, too quiet without her footsteps or her voice. I'd gotten rid of her things, but the emptiness still gnawed at me. I spent hours staring at the ceiling, feeling the ache of betrayal deep in my chest. It hurt so badly I thought I might drown in it. Every time I remembered her tears, her desperate pleas, I'd clench my fists and tell myself I made the right choice. But it didn't make the pain go away, not really. It just made me more determined to move forward. I knew I had to do something more than just survive. I had to start healing somehow. That's when I remembered I'd kept some of the evidence I'd found. The messages, the photos, the proof of her affair. I thought about sharing it with her friends, with her family, but then I hesitated. Part of me wanted her to face the fallout, not just from me, but from everyone who ever trusted her. Maybe that was petty, but I was angry. I was furious that she had lied for so long, betrayed us both in the worst way. But I also knew I couldn't keep dragging this on. I needed to focus on me, on rebuilding my life. I started going to the gym, lifting weights until my muscles trembled. It helped somehow. Physically hurting myself was better than letting the pain consume me completely. I began to see my reflection differently, as if I was slowly regaining control over my own image. One day I decided I needed a gut check. I sat down and wrote everything out, my feelings, my fears, my frustration. I acknowledged the betrayal, but also reminded myself that I deserved better. I didn't want to be the guy who got duped, who stayed mired in misery. No, I wanted to be stronger than this. I wanted to rebuild myself piece by piece. That's when I started to consider my next move. I knew I couldn't just cut her out of my life and pretend it never happened. I had to confront that part of me that still clung to hope, even after everything. But I also realized I couldn't trust her again, not ever. The damage was too deep. I reached out to my closest friends, pulled them into my confidence, and vented every raw emotion I had. Their support was a lifeline. One of them even suggested I see a counselor, and honestly, I thought it might help. I'd spent so long trying to ignore the pain, shove it down, but it was clear I needed to process this properly or risk being stuck in a mire of resentment. In the meantime, I started dating again, tentatively, cautiously. It was strange, feeling vulnerable again after everything, but I knew I couldn't let her betrayal define me. I'd spent so many years building a future, and I wasn't going to let her tear that apart completely. Still, every new person I met carried a shadow, that tiny voice in my head whispering, "Can I trust again?" But here's the thing I realized. Trust is a fragile thing. It's built slowly, but it can be shattered in an instant. And once broken, it's almost impossible to repair. So I decided I'd focus on healing myself first, rebuilding my confidence, my boundaries, my sense of worth. One evening, I looked at myself in the mirror and said aloud, "You're not broken. You're just wounded. And wounds heal. They just take time." I told myself that I deserved someone who was honest, who respected me, that no betrayal was bigger than my ability to recover from it. I know I'll probably carry scars from this for a long time, but I'm learning to live with them. The betrayal changed everything, but it also made me realize what I want and what I won't tolerate anymore. I don't blame myself for trusting her, I blame her for lying. And I refuse to let her lies define who I am. It's still a long road, but I'm walking it now, step by step. And if I've learned anything, it's that you have to be willing to face the pain head on, no matter how much it stings. Because healing only happens when you stop running from it. It's been a few weeks since I finally cut ties completely. Honestly, I feel like I'm just starting to breathe again. The house is still quiet, but now it's a different kind of quiet, peaceful almost. I've boxed up her remaining things and handed over the keys to her apartment. I took back my life, piece by piece, even if some days it still feels like I'm piecing together a broken puzzle. The hardest part was the first night after she left. I sat alone on the couch, staring at the empty spot where she used to be, feeling this strange mix of relief and sadness. I realized that what I'd lost wasn't just her, it was the illusion of trust, the future I'd imagined, the years I thought we shared. But I also knew I'd gained clarity. I was finally free from the lies, the betrayal, the false hope. Looking back, I see now that the pain was necessary. It forced me to face my own boundaries, to understand that I deserved honesty, respect, and loyalty. I won't forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. Instead, I've chosen to see it as a brutal but essential lesson, one that taught me how to value myself more. Every day I remind myself, betrayal isn't the end. It's a harsh wake-up call. And healing, it takes time. It's not about forgetting, but about learning to live with the scars and still holding on to hope for something better. Because somewhere out there, I know trust is still possible, just not with her. Not anymore. I want anyone reading this to know, if you've gone through something similar, you're not alone. It hurts like hell, and it's okay to be angry, to feel betrayed, to mourn what you thought was real. But don't let it keep you down. Take what you need from it, strength, clarity, a sharper sense of what you deserve. Then stand up and keep walking. Because if I can survive this, so can you. And finally, I've learned that revenge isn't about acts of spite or petty payback. It's about reclaiming your power, proving to yourself that you're stronger than the pain. For me, that meant walking away, closing the door, and refusing to let her destroy my future. I didn't need her anymore, I needed to rebuild myself. So I took the final step today. I went to the courthouse, filed for divorce, and handed over the paperwork. The pen shook in my hand, but I signed my name with conviction. It was a concrete act, a marker that I was finally putting this chapter behind me. As I left the courthouse, I felt a strange lightness, an almost imperceptible shift inside. I knew I'd face days of doubt, sadness, and anger still, but I also knew that I survived, that I'd taken back control of my life, and that in the end was all that mattered. The last thing I did was walk into my house, closed the door behind me, and took a long, deep breath. I looked around at the emptiness and smiled softly. It's not the life I envisioned, but it's mine now. And from here, I'll build something better, because you can't undo betrayal, but you can decide what comes next. And I choose to move forward stronger, wiser, and finally free.